Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. We'll give it a moment or two just for people to start coming in. Hi there, I'm John Taylor from Community Energy England. How are we looking on the attendees? Yep, some of you are here early, that's good. So what I think I'll do is I'll start with some of the introductions. We've got a lot to cover in this hour, so I'll just make a start and then people will be able to join us for the kind of interesting bits. Um, right, where are we? Okay. Okay, right. Welcome everyone to today's call. It's great to see you here this lunchtime. The call is going to be recorded if everyone is okay with this. The recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and our website and our Lumio forums. So yeah, if anyone can't make it today from your colleagues, feel free to share them onwards. Um, so yeah, today's topic is part of the Seeing is Believing project between ourselves, Ashden Centre for Sustainable Energy, on behalf of the North East and Yorkshire Net Zero Hub. Um, this is a series of webinars looking at local authority and community energy collaboration. This is the first deep dive into a specific topic after our introductory webinar before Christmas. Um, so we're going to be focusing today on the role of community energy organisations in decarbonising public sector buildings. I'm John Taylor, Head of Capacity Building at Community Energy England. Um, yeah, so we're here today to introduce the Seeing is Believing programme and showcase a fantastic example of collaborative working between community energy organisations and local authorities on decarbonising schools, leisure centres, offices, all the above. Seeing is Believing will share inspiring stories from people already doing great things, from new energy projects to creative local partnerships. You'll hear how these collaborations got started, what's worked well, and how you can get involved and start something similar in your area. Whether you work in a council, a community energy organisation, or just want to learn more, this is a great chance to connect, get new ideas, and see what's possible when we work together for a fairer, greener future. After a few introductory slides from me, we'll be hearing from Marian Kempson, who is the Public Estate Decarbonisation Programme Manager at the North East and Yorkshire Net Zero Hub. Marian will give an overview of the hub's role in supporting local authorities decarbonise, yeah, through resources through that programme. Um, we will then be joined by Mike Smyth from Energy for All and Ben Atkinson from North Lincolnshire Council to talk about their experiences working together on a joint community energy programme. We would like to make this conversation as interactive as possible, so if you do have questions for our speakers, please pop them in the Q&A box within Zoom, and we'll get to those a little later in the hour. So moving on to our slide. So, before I introduce our first speaker, I just wanted to start with a quick introduction to Community Energy England, the Energy Learning Network, and the Seeing is Believing project. Community Energy England, we were founded in 2014 by practitioners within the community energy sector to act as the voice of the sector, connect up community energy activity across the country, and help put people at the heart of the energy transition. Our membership has grown to over 330 now, vast majority being community energy enterprises with some supportive stakeholder groups, local authorities included in that, corporates and installers, things like that. All our work is intended to help clear obstacles, create connections between practitioners and stakeholders, and facilitate the work of community energy organisations, thereby benefiting the sector as a whole. We work to make politicians, both national and local government officials, and energy network operators aware of the community benefits of community energy, as well as the sector's needs, the opportunities and policy obstacles that are holding things back. This is to ensure that community energy organisations are able to create new projects and play an active and important role in the energy transition and us succeeding in the clean power mission as a nation. If you want to find out more about our current policy work and activities, please take a look at our policy and advocacy section on our website. We will circulate links to all relevant pages after this call. You can see our current consultations, active campaigns, and policy responses, as well as find guidance and resources for how you can play your part. Yeah, and hopefully there's going to be some really big, exciting news coming very soon about the government support for the local power plan. Um, the Seeing is Believing programme, yeah, it's been funded by the North East and Yorkshire Net Zero Hub, And it's being delivered by ourselves, Ashden and Centre for Sustainable Energy. We're leading on various work packages. Ashton have been organising some inspiring site visits around the region, taking people out to see live community energy projects, as well as coordinating in-person networking days where people can, yeah, see things in action, talk to the people that made them happen, and then get into the detail of how we can replicate that in other parts of the North East and Yorkshire. Um, yeah, we're showing how collaborations got started, what worked well, and how you can get involved. And the aim of this program is to bring together politicians, local authority officers, civil servants, voluntary sector organisations, and community energy enterprises. Because when you have all those three pillars working together, that's where we've seen the most effective projects happening around the country. Yeah, so yeah, that we build on various guides and work that's already happening within the region. So yeah, we know many of you may well have consulted or been involved in previous studies about the need for growing community energy in the North East and Yorkshire and how it can be moved forward. I know a few years ago there was relatively little activity around in this particular part of the country, but through the efforts of the North East and Yorkshire Net Zero Hub and the role they've had in administering the Community Energy Fund and now the GB Energy Community Fund, we've really seen the North East region and Yorkshire really start to step up and come up with some fantastic projects. So it's great to see the level of activity growing here. We also keep track of other studies that have been going on around the country about how community energy and local authorities can collaborate better, what their kind of main needs to unlock to make that happen. Next slide, please. We're also involved with the same partners as part something called the Energy Learning Network, which is funded by the National Lottery. That's to work together across the whole of the UK to put on more training and skills and mentoring opportunities to accelerate the growth and awareness of community energy as a potential route forward. We've also launched another service called Community Energy Go, which is available in the region where it's kind of advice from experienced people within the sector for new entrants. If you're looking to develop a project or put in a funding application, you can get some free support through that to put in a better quality project and yeah, fill in the skills gaps that may be in your group currently. Right, let's have a look. I think we're probably ready to launch into the meat of today's topic. So I'd like to hand over to Marian from the North East and Yorkshire Net Zero Hub, please.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to really introduce my team. I am Programme Manager for Public Estate Decarbonisation in the North East and Yorkshire Net Zero Hub. Our team has been in existence for just over a year, and we provide support for, as our name suggests, public estate energy reduction, decarbonisation, and I'm just going to give a bit of an overview of what we do as a team. So if I could have the next slide, please. So the previous slide, I did put that slide up to show that we are a relatively small team. There are just three of us. And I think as we move to the next slide, really recognising there are a lot of public estate buildings in our region, and we are here to support. So this just gives a bit of an overview that we're working with local authorities, mayoral authorities, NHS trusts, police and emergency services, and then there are many schools and educational buildings and organisations, etc. So really our role is in many ways very much a strategic role, and to work as effectively as we can to support public sector organisations in the region. If I could have the next slide. So I put this in. I did hesitate to put it in, but I think it's so important that I included it. Really a reminder of where decarbonisation fits in, and that from our perspective, what this shows is that on the left you have the very low or no cost measures in buildings, which give savings and have very short paybacks. So that includes energy and building management through to low cost measures, moving on towards the right to short, medium paybacks, longer paybacks, and decarbonisation. So our role is really balancing both the reduction of carbon emissions as well as decarbonisation. So if I could go to the next slide. So just to give a flavour of what's happened in, I was going to say the last year, but actually it's happening at the moment and it's happening over the last few months. And I think I've worked in this sector for a long time, and it's really seen that there is a step change happening in terms of public sector decarbonisation. There obviously is much more to do, but really to give a flavour that obviously GB Energy has funded in the last few months solar on 75 schools in the North East and Yorkshire. They're currently being delivered by March. I was told by the contractor that there are about 10 schools a week are getting solar panels because they're sort of working very fast paced. We don't actually manage that program, but obviously in our role, we sort of work alongside that program. There are also large installations going on 15 NH trusts in the North East and Yorkshire, as well as the Mayor's Renewable Fund, which is looking at over 60 solar projects, again, across the region for delivery by March this year. Alongside that, we are working with really starting with local authorities and extending to other public sector organisations to develop and support them to implement the decarbonisation strategy. This includes a solar strategy and having solar ready buildings, which I'm not going to go into at the moment, but just to sort of comment on that. And then as a hub, we are looking really at solar carports as well in the region. If I could have the next slide. So this is really, one of our, as I said, we need to work strategically. We also very much work collaboratively and really rather than looking at individual projects, it's actually looking at these projects in a wider context, both in terms of strategy development, but also across the region and sharing understanding and knowledge and experience. And that's been a really successful part of what we've been doing in the last year. I just put these up as really examples, and I know they're hospitals, but some fantastic examples in the region. And I think that's really important to remember that. And as I said, it's the sharing of best practice that's been, really, we've had really positive sort of feedback from that. If we could go to the next. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but it's a bit of an overview of the work that we are being provided for that we are providing for public estate organisations. And I've highlighted the sort of the key ones that I wanted to highlight and bring out. And as I said, we are working with public estate organisations to think strategically and to look at the portfolio of buildings, to prioritise those buildings, to collate the data that's needed on those buildings, and then to turn that into a strategy, to look at the barriers to strategy implementation, which can vary from procurement right through to delivery barriers, etc. And then I've mentioned, the strategy leads into the planning and pipeline development, so that we're now moving on away from sort of individual buildings. We're saying, right, if we had the funding available, where would go? And this was those organisations that had pipeline projects were in a position to sort of access funding last year, particularly. And then, I've said about the strategic approach, an area-based approach. We're just starting a mapping project to digitally map, be able to access public estate across the region. And then really leading into delivery, business case support. And for those of you who know the public sector decarbonisation scheme, there's been, again, I don't have the figures to hand, but in the region, there's quite a few projects that have been funded over the last 5 years. And it's really sort of, the legacy from that. And there are still some projects going on and looking at the lessons learned and really having a bit of a rethink as to where we are as a region. Yeah. What I haven't added in there is obviously looking for alternative ways to fund. I think it's funding and finance options, really post PSDS, which was sort of large scale funding for public estate. So we're exploring, really open to exploring opportunities for that. And yes, if we can go to the final slide, which is really a summary of what I've been saying. I just pulled out what I thought were the key elements that people on the call would be interested in. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Marian. Yeah, I think the work of the hubs, you've got some really good oversight and resources to support local authorities as they work out where to focus their efforts and yeah, prioritize the best kind of impact projects for their own estate. Um, and I think, yeah, particularly around the funding and finance, that's where community energy organisations can start to come in. And there's just a whole bank of very keen volunteers and enthusiasts and people with professional skills that are there to support they want to be part of the process and assist their local authorities with achieving these goals as well. So, yeah, well, please continue to put some questions forward in the Q&A feature. And Marian, I hope you can stay for the Q&A bit, but we'll save the questions for after we've heard from Mike and Ben. So, Mike, yeah, please, over to you.
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Mike Smyth. I chair Energy for All, and I want to talk about the partnership between North Lincolnshire Community Energy for All, and North Lincolnshire Council, which I think has been a brilliant example of decarbonisation, saving money, increasing energy security, and supporting the community. And it's replicable. That's one of the other key aspects of it. Just a bit about Energy for All. Energy for All itself is a not-for-profit cooperative of community energy organisations. It provides their back office and it also provides development team and development resources to build more renewable energy generation, including supporting the development of new community energy organisations so that they can replicate the sort of work we've done in North Lincolnshire in other areas. It came about because we were contacted by North Lincolnshire Council to say, would we set up a community energy organisation in North Lincolnshire? And also, would we organise some matched funding of about £1.25 million from a community share offers to match the town's fund grant they had succeeded in obtaining. So it would start that way with a fantastic base of about £2.5 million of capital. And I just want to mention we saw two features there. First, North Lincolnshire is a unitary authority, and I think that's been very helpful because it's got resources, it's of reasonable scale. It's also still very locally and very outcome focused. And I also mentioned it's conservative control because there is cross-party support for this work. So some of the strongest community energy groups work in partnership with Labour councils, Lib Dem councils, Conservative councils, and also SNP councils. It is not something which is peculiar to one particular party. Just as a quick summary on how community energy itself typically works on solar PV, for those who might not be familiar with it. Broadly, we raise the money from the community, from the public, by a share offer to fund the installation of solar panels on buildings. And the public do it partly because we pay interest, and partly because they're committed about doing something practical with some of their savings to help tackle climate change. So it's a value-based investment, but a very popular one. And we sell the electricity that gets generated on those buildings to the building. And with the income we get from that, we're able both to pay interest to the members, cover all the maintenance, return the capital over time, and generate a surplus, which we use to support community activities, particularly more energy-related activities in that community. So there's no financial risk to the council. They don't have to pay either for the capital cost or for the maintenance, so that makes it very attractive. We've gone to the next slide. Just to say, the benefits here are very strong. So from the point of view of the community energy organisation, the council owns plenty of suitable buildings, unmortgaged freeholds, using daytime electricity. And also, they've got very good contacts themselves to businesses, to other aspects of the public sector, such as the NHS, which can be more difficult to access just as members of the community. There's a common mission. We're all seeking the same outcome. We're seeking to transition to net zero, support community, increase financial savings and stability. So the relations we have a lot of they're transparent, the contracts are very fair, there's mutual support. And then the community energy organisation itself brings the capital it needs, so the council doesn't have to pay for it. It brings in a lot of skills and time. It's much easier to build things from the community side than it is through the public sector and all the requirements they have. And also, we do the monitoring and the maintenance of the systems, which there was a reference earlier to the Great British Energy funding systems on schools, but they really haven't thought about how those systems are going to be monitored and maintained afterwards. And the big strength of community energy is, yes, this is all done. And we've certainly seen that through these partnerships, we deliver more energy more quickly and more cheaply than either can do alone. So we just move on. So this is what we've achieved in about 2.5 years in North Lincolnshire. Because obviously it's a bit of a build-up before it starts. 23 sites, quite big sites too, 2 megawatts of capacity on the roof and about £2 million spent so far, with aggregate savings of about £330,000 so far to the council. We've raised 1.35 million from the public. And there's a good pipeline, we've got plenty more to go for. So it really has been, the partnership has managed to deliver things at real speed here, which is most encouraging. If I just move on to the next slide, I'll skip this one because we are a bit short of time. I'll just go on to the one after that. Why has it worked so well? And I think from the council, I would say why it's worked particularly well from North Lincolnshire Council is that there has been buy-in from senior officers. They have given us access to very able officers to help deliver this. And there's been political support as well, right from the very top, including one member of the cabinet who's on the board of the community energy organisation. And that drive has meant that all the obstacles has been a real focus in making sure they can be overcome quickly and well. And we've agreed a lot of standard documents and processes to move things forward speedily. And it produces a steady stream of good news stories, which, to be honest, the council members in particular like, because every new site is a new photo opportunity, but they're thoroughly deserved too, because they've made it all happen. So this is why the council can make a good difference. They help provide the sites as well, the access to their own sites and good access to the other suitable sites in that community. And then from the Energy for All point of view, which is the next slide, Energy for All provides a lot of support to North Lincolnshire Community Energy. So North Lincolnshire Community Energy has its local board, it has volunteers, and is active in that community and increasing its presence. But we have access through Energy for All to the specialist project developers who organise the building of the sites, to people who support the fundraising that's needed to make it happen through the share offers, and then all the operational side, the accounts, the billing, doing the VAT returns, and with a lot of experience there. So the council has a lot of confidence that everything's going to be delivered properly. We've got some sophisticated maintenance provisions should they be needed, and that aspect of it just means that the community groups can focus very much on local contacts and building up local presence, but they don't have to spend all their time in doing things like VAT returns or billing and checking the monitoring of the panels and so forth. So it's a very, very good partnership, three-way partnership that way. Just move on. Just give this as just one rather nice example. I think the Bath Hall in Scunthorpe is where we've installed some solar panels, quite a big array there. It's the big entertainment complex in Scunthorpe. So much, that often happens, but then the council has contact with the local pantomime dame, very well-known figure, So they were able to organise the formal opening of the Bath Hall system with this very picturesque character. And that's something which, as a community group, we would have found it much more difficult to do. So again, even in these sort of slightly different ways, the partnership just makes things much more powerful. So that was it. It's replicable. That's the key message, and we're very happy. The council's happy, the community group's happy, Energy for All's very happy to support the replicability of this in other suitable local authorities. So do please contact us if you want any support on that. That was it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Feel free to continue, Ben.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for leading that on so nicely. So, hello everybody. So I'm Ben Atkinson. I'm the Energy and Sustainability Manager at North Lincolnshire Council. So it's just south of the Humber, outside of the North East patch. But we do consider ourselves to be a big part of the Yorkshire and Humber region still. And I've been invited today to give a bit of an overview of North Lincolnshire Council and how we've worked with community energy over the last couple of years. And I've done a little bit of a different spin on it, following on from Mike. So next slide, please. So I thought it'd be useful to give a bit about us at an operational level and sort of the challenge. So we've got 213 sites, that's excluding commercial property. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see we've got 8,000 tonnes, just over 8,000 tonnes, were our scope 1 and 2 emissions. As a cabinet, they've signed on scope 1 and 2 to be net zero by 2030. So there's a big challenge still there of 8,000 tonnes is the big message. 34%, sorry, if we just go back, 34% was electricity, 40% heating, and 25%, I think, on fleet. There's been an error there on the infographic. Anyway, so in terms of the numbers, what have we consumed? A lot is a summary of that slide. 14 million kilowatt hours of grid supplied electricity. We've generated nearly 900,000 kilowatt of solar. That's through a mix of NLCE owned system that's Mike's outlined, as well as our own systems that we've got on through the feed-in tariff and others that we did prior to the community energy approach. So we've got a pretty good solid foundation of solar. The bottom is something I wanted to sort of include as well, because whilst there's a big focus on electricity, we do consume 15.5 million kilowatt hours of gas. This is 24-25 data. 5 million of biomass. All of our leisure centres run on biomass systems with backup gas. And we've consumed 1.5 million of oil. There are 11 schools that remain on oil. They are predominantly rural schools in village locations that are in quite tricky buildings. So it's a challenging situation as to how we're going to get that 8,079 tonnes down on all three areas of that donut chart, given we only have so much money between now and the 2030 target. So where do we focus? Next slide, please. There should be another one at the top. There we go. Yeah, I've put that as simple. So what do we want to do? We want to stop burning stuff. That's what I keep telling our politicians and our senior leadership team. That's across all three sectors. We want to lead by example. And by that, I mean, there's quite a lot of local frustration and national frustration around sort of being let down by the energy sector. We have quite a lot of high level of fuel poverty in certain deprived areas of North Lincolnshire. So it is not necessarily the most luxurious place to set up a community energy group, but we've shown through the work we've done with partnership work that we can get people on board. So we've continued to lead by example and take that approach where everybody is inclusive in this transition and making sure they understand it. Reduce our dependency on fossil fuels, that's straightforward. We need to improve our local air quality. We know that we are in a very poor quality area for air. Our environmental management team obviously do a lot of monitoring on them stations, etc. And given that we have 8 square miles of the area which is steelworks, it is an issue at a public health level, which is managed. We want to reduce energy costs, so everybody wants to do that, and that's straightforward. And where I think the last two are key for this webinar in particularly are the educate and engage residents. So often using the council's slogan and putting the council's badge on it, it immediately gets resentment from residents. it immediately gets the potholes, bins not cleaned, except bins not collected, etc. So if we break this down and we develop the community energy group, we've got Northlinks Community Energy, we've got a superb couple of officers there now working in a local level, and they're able to have them I think they've called it climate conversations with a cuppa, and some really good productive conversations on the ground. So that's feeding back into our target. What we want to do is educate and engage residents on all aspects of energy and wider sustainability. And the last one, again, that's key for community energy, is retaining funds locally. Following on from my point about the frustration of those the corporate suppliers, and everyone taking it for granted, there's a big push on trying to keep every pound spent in North Lincolnshire in our local economy, linking up with our economic growth plans. So that's where we can use community energy to our advantage. Next slide, please. I'll quickly touch on this one. So how do we do it? So that's the challenge I guess we all face. The two areas that I believe community energy can play a big role is I've put sort out electricity supplies. By that I mean sort of on-site generation where possible, reducing the market exposure. We all saw during the sort of Russian invasion of Ukraine and the impact on the prices, we was felt exactly the same as the domestic household. So every school went up significant amount of money. And going back to the previous slide, we remain very exposed to the market for all of our supplies of electricity. So if we are to progress down decarbonisation route on heating and transport, we need to get our supply right. So that needs to be resilient, that needs to be generated by ourselves. And that's where the community energy angle is very, very important. The second one is upgrading our buildings. So we've got a lot of work to do on addressing heat losses, etc. And that's where I think the council can do that part of the jigsaw, and obviously community energy can do the first point. We've got plan effectively. By that I mean it takes time to predict what's around the corner in terms of what investment's required. So share offers take a considerable amount of time, knowing when the boilers are due for replacements and lining things up sort of 2, 3, 5, 10 years ahead, and not necessarily share offers 10 years ahead, but having a good asset management plan. Carefully assess all technical options. So by that I mean that's including heating solutions, PV solutions, all your monitoring and control, because there are a lot of people that will tell you the wrong things out there, as we have learnt. Build strong business cases, securing finances, blended finance, collectively using grants, capital, and other means, and work together cross-sector. So I think we've done a lot of that. I think Energy for All and North Links Community Energy have benefited from our knowledge on our side, having access to contractors and sort of mechanical and electrical competent engineers, as well as we've learned from their side in terms of what their offering is and their skill sectors. And then working with contractors, obviously, on their specialisms. So cross-sector is very important. I have put push boundaries, work at pace, but don't rush. The next slide, please. So a couple of images on this slide, just more around on the decarbonisation front, not necessarily the PV. There's a big focus on PV, and we're making great headway in PV through various different schemes, but there is a huge amount of work to happen behind the scenes. And that's hence the reason I've put some images on there on some very old oil boiler heating systems that are fueling some of our key sites within our estate. They are architecturally challenging buildings. The one on the bottom left is a Grade 1 listed building, a Regency mansion in a country park in North Lincolnshire. It is not the ideal building for solar, but there may be a way of putting some form of solar if our conservation officer comes on board. The middle one at the bottom is, some would say it's iconic, some would say it's flagship. I'll let you make your own judgment on that building, but it is the central library in the town's centre, which is now part of our new regenerated square. You can see it's a very challenging looking building, high consumer. The boilers to the right on the bottom right are on the top of that building, and all of the plant is on the top of that building, and it needs a whole new roof. So in terms of the challenges, for coming back to where we can line the projects up together, if we knew community energy had an appetite or was able to do something, we could maybe get that building to a quality that enables a PV system or whatever the solution happens. But I just wanted to highlight that because there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we're now trying to get our teeth stuck into, because some would say the PV is almost a cherry on the cake element that's visible and very attractive, and it is great, and it's offering a great advantage. And then my final slide here is the role of community energy and a few notes of what I've put. It's a proven delivery model, so it works. It's backed by people that care, so there's a lot of interest in it, and they want to see where their money's been spent, and I think that's great. Widely accepted at all levels of our organisation. Mike's alluded to our leader, our cabinet members that are interested in this, and it's widely accepted. It's hard not to get these cases, not to get them through. It's attractive to us. I've put its ability to access finance as well. So we aren't eligible for all types of finance, and it is often hard to know what's out there that we can't get onto that a community group can. And finally, a few sort of reflective points that I wanted to share really with the group around role of community energy in estate decarbonisation is working out how community energy can address other aspects. So we've got a very good project with Mike and the team at North Links now, North Links Community Energy, around how they may be able to cover the costs of some of the roof repair work as well, and the structural repair at our depot, which is a considerable sum, and we do not have that capital. So we're working creatively on a finance model around how we could make that happen, and I think that's very exciting. Continue to upskill, so heat decarbonisation is a constant barrier that we're now trying to break down. So it would be great to see some community energy groups approach that topic. Push on developing generating assets. I've said we continue to see our electricity consumption go up. We're increasing it for transport use, electrification of heating, etc. So we will need more generating assets, and we will prefer to use community-owned assets where possible to obviously support our the finance side of it. Simplify the messaging and legals. So we've done a lot of work on that, and I would recommend if anybody needs to get in touch to speak to Energy for All or contact ourselves around what we've done on the legal side of it, and simplify the messaging. And my final point I'm reiterating again is working cross-sector. I believe that may be my last slide. And a nice image of how we actually have done it on the ground, speaking to lots of children in and around Scunthorpe. So there's my contact details. I'm more than happy to take any questions after the webinar, and I've put even better, do register an interest, I'll become a member. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben and Mike, for that. Yeah, really great example of what's possible. Yeah, when both organisations work together on this. Before we get into the Q&A, I'll run through a few examples from around the country of where we've seen other collaborations working really well as well. And just before we do that, yeah, some of your points there, particularly around that retaining funding and funds locally within your town and the region, I think it's a really good point. I did a piece of work in a previous role where looking at the Greater Brighton region, where we added up how much homes and businesses were spending on fossil fuels, like petrol bills, diesel bills, gas bills, electricity. And it amounted to something like £3 billion collectively across that area that was just disappearing out of the economy buying in those fuels. So if you then switch to then that energy spend going to locally owned renewable energy projects, then suddenly that's potentially £2 billion staying within your local economy and circulating. So there's a massive, in terms of the interest payments as well, about paying for these things, if much as that can go to local investors and savers and pensioners as well, it all is part of the picture. But yeah, we'll hopefully come back to some of those points in a moment. So this is perhaps one of my favourite projects I'll talk about now in terms of this kind of collaboration. It's a school down in Essex, village called Tollsbury, where it's a really nice blended funding example that made use of the previous public sector decarbonisation scheme grant that the government offered. So the council, the kind of measures involved was a whole upgrade for the school, with both the heating system and energy efficiency measures and solar panels simultaneously. And it worked because the council were able to access pretty significant funding for the heating system through the PSDS grant, as well as the windows. And then the community energy organisation stepped in as well and raised a further £200,000 to match fund that, with the kind of investment for the other upgrades, so for the solar and the LEDs and things. Um, Without that, like the grant was conditional on the council providing some match funding. The council at the time were pretty cash strapped, so they didn't have the capital to match fund the government grant, but the community came in and provided the match funding so the project could go ahead. And then, it's kind of paid back through a kind of pay as you save. The energy bill savings netted overall are greater than the cost of repaying in the kind of finance for the project. So that's kind of the business model. Repayments come out of the energy savings for the schools, but the school still saves money at the same time. There are a few lessons learned with this in terms of the community side. We recognise having someone like Energy for All in the mix helps smaller projects become more professional and agile. Like raising that £200,000 in this case took quite a long time because it was that community's first share offer. But in the future, for replicating this sort of thing, I think we can bring in through other parties kind of bridge finance to make these projects happen. So sometimes you have a like summer holiday window, you need to get some things installed while the building's free and people need paying on time to make that happen. So having different financing sources that can kind of keep projects to time is an important part. Obviously, the PSDS grant was we'd like to get back to that point where the funding's available to pay for heat pumps. It works at domestic levels with the boiler upgrade scheme grant and at big urban heat network levels, but this bit in the middle, we're hoping that the government will, or the combined authorities or GB Energy may come back in with some support to make this kind of combined solar heat pump energy upgrade package viable again. We're really keen to kind of crack this business model as well. Can you add batteries into the mix? Can you do kind of smart time of use electricity tariffs like domestic customers have to then kind of optimize the running costs to make the heat pumps more affordable on the financing route as well. Next slide, please. Just similar few pictures of the outcome of that project. Nice shiny plant room. Nice insulated heat pumps there. I think it was about 120 kilowatt ground source heat pump system that went in. So it's a hefty bit of kit. But it's also coupled with, it's not actually on the roof, this installation. It's actually a ground mount array in the school's playing fields. So there's a little snapshot of there, about 68 kilowatts of PV alongside it. That's a really nice combination of technologies coming together there. So moving beyond just solar on its own to enabling that wider electrification and decarbonisation. Oh no, where's my slide gone? I had a couple more slides in here. They don't seem to have made it into the deck. I'll just talk about them. I was going to show a few studies and reports that have done similar situations to covered earlier about the solar farms supplying hospitals. And we actually think there's an opportunity there for bringing wind turbines back into the mix as well. The climate charity released a great report called Wind Powered Hospitals and looked at that business model of having direct wire wind turbines supplying like popular public sector buildings like hospitals and high schools and things like that. And now that the planning ban has been lifted from over a year now, community wind in England is a viable thing again. And just over the border in north of in Scotland, onshore wind has been very successfully developing over the past 10 years, whereas we're probably behind the curve in England. So there is catch up to do, both in terms of hitting the clean power mission, but just, making the most of that energy security resilience that kind of locally supplied renewables can bring as well. So things like the GB Energy Community Fund can help pay for wind feasibility studies. And then, I think there was also a snapshot as well of our project we've done called the Community Heat Development Units, which is a similar principle, but using wind and solar power to run district heat network energy centres, maybe using public buildings as an anchor load like a leisure centre, but then enabling that heat network to spread to neighbouring residential properties as well. So yeah, looking beyond just the public how the public buildings can enable wider area-based decarbonisation as well. We'll share some links to those afterwards. Right. I think we'll move on to the Q&A section back now. Seeing there's a few things going on in chat. Yeah, please keep adding your questions to the Q&A part, and they'll pop up for us to kind of pick out rather than scrolling through the chat, if that's okay. I've got a few lined up so we can keep the discussion going. Actually, one thing just comes, you skipped a slide, Mike, actually. The thing about the town deal. I think that might actually be worth covering if possible, or talking about those enabling funds that government might be coming out with, particularly with the local power plan. Yeah, previously councils and community energy organisations could access European funding or other shared prosperity funding from various government departments to seed fund some of these collaborations, and we may well be getting some of those returning in the near future. How did that work?
Yes. With North Lincolnshire, we had a Towns Fund grant, and that was probably a catalyst for setting it all up as well. First, I think one of the big benefits of it was it's a sort of a use it or lose it grant. So that gave considerable political drive to deliver the community energy project. So that undoubtedly helped. And we used it in a way which I think was really excellent. One of the main ways we used it was